How do you create more realistic shadows in Photoshop? And what is up? I'm Jason Olsred, and this is Tuesday, so you're getting a tutorial. Now, when I started creating composites years ago, I really had no idea what I was doing when it came to shadow. I would just copy the object I was creating a shadow for, fill it in with black, and I'd transform it to look kind of like a shadow before giving it a blur and throwing my hands up in absolute frustration. Fortunately, after creating hundreds and hundreds of these composited portraits, I think I've learned a thing or two about shadows. Now, let's jump into Photoshop so I can show you the first of 3 shadows that you're going to want to learn if you want more realistic shadows.
All right, so let's go ahead and start adding in our first shadow, which is the shadow that is cast by the light. So I'm going to drop a layer in underneath me, my main character here. So let's go ahead and title me Jason, because that's who I am. That's what people call me. All right. Okay, so with our brush tool, you can hit B on your keyboard. You want to make sure you're at 100% flow, 100% opacity. And we know that the angle of our light is going right here because we can see it right here. And we can see it on this one right here. We can see it on the cars back here. So we have clues to what our highlights and our shadows are doing. So let's just go ahead and stick with that plan. We don't want to make a shadow going off the other direction. We want to make sure we stick with what nature is giving us already. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring that over here like that, and then probably just about like that. And it gets wider as we go up there. So we're going to go right on this guy here, and then boom, 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 boom. And you're probably thinking, what in God's name are you doing? Because I don't understand. I don't either. I'm just making a blob of a shadow here, okay? And then I'm going to come in here right there by the foot and right there by that foot right down there. And so you want to make sure that when you're creating that shadow that's cast by the lights, we have a main light source that's coming in from my right, and it's hitting me and casting a shadow. So that's the main light shadow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm okay with the feathering of this. That's pretty good. What we could do is with our erase tool, I could come in here and we could make this a little bit more sharp right through the beginning parts of it right there. Because we know that a shadow is going to be sharper when it's closer to you, and it's going to feather off as it gets further away from you. So something like that might be more in line with what we'd see in nature. So up here we have a nice blur. Down here when we're close to the feet and to the legs, we get a little bit sharper. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that right there. And I'm going to drop my opacity down. And what I'm just looking at, what to me looks good, what looks normal. And I don't like to be pulled in this close to my image when I'm working on this. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this back so I can see what it looks like from far away here. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep bringing that down. So what I'm looking for at this point is really at this part of the shadow. I already know this is going to be too dark, but this part of the shadow here is what I'm looking at. And I want to stick with kind of the same tone or darkness that we have in here. These could be just a little bit darker, but right here, that's what I'm looking at. So I'm probably going to go roughly in the 35% stage or area right there. So I'm going to go ahead with our shadow. I want to get rid of some of this. I want to keep some of it, but I want to get rid of some of it too. So with my brush tool, and I'm on black, I want to make sure that I'm at about 30%. So I'm just going to come in here and just kind of brush away until I kind of get where I want to be there. So that's not too bad. Right there. And the thing why I like using a layer mask rather than just the erase tool is like, okay, well, I don't like it. I erase too much. I can come back in with my white and kind of flip it and redo it. So I haven't gotten rid of those pixels permanently. So let's go right about there. It's kind of coming down. Kind of went just a little too dark or raced too much there. All right, so let's go right about there. And that is our shadow that's cast by the light.
Check this out. Right now, you know more about shadows than 95 to 98% of the rest of the world population. How freaking cool is that? Now, before opening up Photoshop, let's satisfy the hungry algorithm of YouTube and hit the like button on this video. And if you want to hang out with me more for some Tuesday tutorials, subscribe to my channel. Also, if you want to support my channel here on YouTube and get some pretty cool photography perks like the files for this video so you can follow along, go over to patreon.com/pixels and grain and you can get hooked up. All right, so now that you know how to create the first shadow that's been cast by a light source, let's go back into Photoshop and I'll show you the next shadow in this process.
The next shadow that we are going to add in is going to be our ambient shadow. So here we have our light, we'll just call this light shadow. Now we're going to have our ambient shadow. So this is a shadow that is actually cast by the light that just naturally falls down on any object. It doesn't matter what it is. So like you see back here in this car, all this shadow underneath the car is an ambient shadow. And people do the same thing. We create ambient shadows. So rather than having a shadow that casts all the way out like this and up against the wall, we want to create something where the light is just falling down on us and creates a shadow. So with my brush tool, and I'm going to be at 100% flow, 100% opacity, I could actually change the shape of this brush if I wanted to and give it an angle. And let's see here. Let's bring that angle back down just a little bit. So maybe right about there, and let's see what happens there. So that's not too bad right there. I'm just going to come in and increase it right about there. So that's pretty good right there. Make sure we get back to our circle on the brush because I always forget that. And then with our opacity, we can bring this down to something that is a lot more reasonable. So maybe something right about there at around 40 to 45 range. So we'll go at 42. All right. So that is the ambient shadow.
Now, our shadows are starting to really take shape and look a lot more realistic. But before we can claim shadow mastery, I've got one more shadow that I need to show you. So back into Photoshop we go.
Alrighty, so if you've stuck it out this long, good for you. You deserve one more shadow that we actually need, because right now we're doing pretty darn good. I think this is looking really good, but we need one more shadow because at this point I'm still floating in our scene. So let's go ahead and add in another layer above our ambient, and we're going to call this one a contact shadow. All right, so where anything meets the ground, we're going to have an actual contact shadow, a shadow that's created by that connection. And that's what connects us in this scene to the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and enlarge this all the way up. So right now you can see that I'm floating pretty good in this scene. And I'm going to bring this all the way down, and I'm just going to create a small little shadow that goes right underneath my shoe and against the concrete there. And then as I come up here to the front, you can see where the toe of my shoe kind of angles up here. We want to make sure that we still keep with that. So that's going to cast a shadow as well. So it's going to come out just a little bit like that. Just about like that. Okay, just about like that. All right, so come back here to the back here and do the same exact thing. And we're going to bring it out just a little bit, right about there. And if you can see right here, we've got just a little bit of ghosting or kind of a white edge that we didn't get completely off of there. So I'm just going to add that layer mask onto there, and I can come in and erase that out here. So we'll make sure we're on black. I can come in here and just knock that out there. Pretty good right there. All right. So with our contact shadow now, we can drop that opacity and give it to a place that looks better. So that's pretty good right there. Sometimes you might need to do 2 layers on this, but let's go right here. I'm going to grab my erase tool. And the reason I'm going to do this is because as this shadow comes out from underneath the shoe, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So I want to go ahead and feather that shadow out with my erase tool at about 10%. And then right here, same thing. So as we go back in here, it's still kind of light. I want to make sure that it's darker. So I'm going to come back in and add 1 more layer above my contact shadow. And I'm just going to come in and add in just a little bit of darkness right back in the back there. And that's just further feathering that light, that shadow as it goes back deeper into the crevice, into the contactedness of the foot to the concrete. All right, so that's looking pretty darn good right there.
And there you have it, the three shadows that'll make your composites and your photographs look way, way better and way more realistic. Now give these 3 shadows a try, and I'd love to know how it goes for you in the comments below. Now I have one more little shadow trick to show you that's hidden up my sleeve.
All the way up the sleeve here, right up in here.
That'll be the shadow icing on your cake. So if you head on over to patreon.com/pixels and grain, I'll reach way up my sleeve and I'll pull it out and I'll show you. All right, so thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next Tuesday. You got it, on another tutorial.